helping with all the food. She coordinates all the shows. She's back over there. And I say it again. And she's doing all the Newcastle Library shows now. So those are all public places where you can go in and take your friends. And in fact, Ellen Cooper, our program coordinator for this year, has a show right now at Bellevue Library. And she just had a reception on March 29th there for her show. So you can do that. Yeah. Current Bellevue Library public art. And so I just wanted to remind you about that program. And so we have a couple other announcements. One from Mommy Schumacher. She is our public outreach, and she's also taking charge this year of our experimental education program. So here, Mommy.
Good morning. So just made a deal with Teresa, and she is going to teach, I call it a class, which is hands-on 3-hour members workshop per se, and more for the beginning artists. But as you know, we can always refresh our knowledge and skills about the basic art, and she's going to talk about composition / value, because she believes in strongly that value has to be right. And so she is going to teach it in June. Yes.
With pastels or in general?
Actually, it's 3 hours, and medium is not really that important. We're going to talk about, I think, mainly about the composition and value, which can be with any medium, as you know. Anybody who's interested, I just wanted to see. You can really, I do all these. But it relates to every medium or every painting process, no matter what your style is.
Why I asked was, I have a big container of pastels, and it's like a 64 crayon box. I mean, it's cool, and I haven't figured out able to do it. So I think I'm really more for a beginning pastel workshop. Just play around with how to handle some of the stuff that's so different than oils.
Right. Well, I'll be demoing in pastels, like I said, and I'll have my pastels there. But other people who want to be working in acrylics or watercolor or oil, I'm very happy to help you out with that also. But it's all basically the same thing, what I'll be talking about as far as composition, just simplifying a subject, the composition, leading, compositions, keeping the viewer's interest, and then making a stronger painting with good value choices. So creating simple shapes within the landscape, simplifying your shapes within the landscape, and keeping the integrity of their value. So the value is inherently dark, and making sure that at the end of your painting, at the end of the art, I find a lot of people have good intentions when they start the painting, and even have a good value study, but by the time they get towards the end of the painting, it's all done just into a mid-range values with some lights. And so maintaining being able to keep those richer, darker values and really strengthen your painting. So we're still trying to decide on which Saturday of the month of June, and
it's only to about 10, maximum 15 people. So please sign up as soon as you can. Yes.
It will not be the first Saturday. I'm teaching in LA, I think, but after that. So I was just waiting for them. Am I doing the demo first and then you do the meeting afterwards? Or?
You're gonna do the demo in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll finish, this is our meeting right now, and we'll be done in about 5 minutes, and then you'll be starting real soon, really soon.
I'm gonna just keep blowing on this.
Yeah.
Make it fun.
Okay. So the details about the class are confirmed up right now, as you can tell. They'll be on in the newsletter and on the website. So how many of you go to EAFA.org website every now and then to check up on new stuff and news about when we're meeting here? And how many of you got the shout out about the reminder for this meeting? Did you not get it? Are you looking at it? Okay. Okay, so I'm just wanting to make sure we're getting the word out and everyone's getting it. So, the updates on the class, the details about the date of the class, the charge, and will be on the website and in the next newsletter for May. And then we won't have a newsletter June, July, or August because we take the summer off. But we're not really taking the summer off because that's our Plein Air program starts in May and we go through September. Every week we're out painting all around the area and it's really fun if you like landscapes. And we have the Bellevue Botanical Garden, we go to Snohomish Falls, there's just a whole variety of outdoor places to go paint. It's on the website in the Plein Air section. That's where you get the schedule for Plein Air. We can't wait for it to start this year. Hopefully it won't be as rainy. Last year it rained for the first month or two on Tuesdays. Okay, then we have another big event coming up, and the details are firming up as well. Details such as exact dates. But Roger here is going to talk to you about it.
We're going to have
Hold it closer to you.
we're going to have an open show, open to all artists in Washington State. So the date hasn't changed because we're going to do webinars, but that will be in the newsletter. We're going to have the show run through not entry, cafe. So the entries will be sent through cafe. The exact dates will be in the newsletter. The open show will be without prizes. The jury will pick the first prize, which will be worth $2,000 for the winner. Second prize, $1,000. Third, $500. And there will also be honorable mentions. I think 60 pages honorable mention, and they will go up onto the website, be available for sale. I think that's about it for one.
It's all online.
It's all on, yeah, sorry, it's all online, so no need to frame stuff and things like that. That's about it. Okay?
Can I?
Eric, please enter.
Is that the due date at the end of this month?
Again, I'm not sure, I don't remember that, but it changed with the date. But we have 2 days.
Oh, Edmund doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the first dates is when the information is available on the cafe website. And a month later is when the entries are due.
Okay.
The exact dates I do not remember. Sorry about that. Okay, so please enter the show.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, and here's Ellen. Thank you.
Before we get started, I would like to ask the audience about the orientation of Teresa's easel here. It's on a slight skew, and is that really bothersome? Should we try to make it, full front on? Any? Yes. Okay. Claire? Oh, yes? Are you working in front of this table, Teresa? Well, we want to see you working. It's what? Right, right. Okay. Yeah, it's not a question for you, it's actually a question for us to show the pastels that you're going to be using. Yeah, so we need to orient the camera to show. So you'll be working around on this side, Teresa? Sorry, we're just still figuring this all out. Yeah.
Turn it that way.
Turn it that way, you're okay? Yeah, come on then.
The other way, the other way.
Yeah, straight.
Yeah,
Be straight
Is that
on.
better?
Yeah.
Is that better? Yeah, it's the same.
Okay. I guess we'll put on this. The color that's projected on the screen, I don't think you can do it, that's the crossroads, yeah. And Teresa, let's make sure your mic works. And
Could you move the light back a little bit more so it's not quite as bright? Because that sunset is much brighter on the actual one. I don't know. It's straight light.
Yeah, I'll just have to use my big person voice so that you can all hear me properly. Can't hear you very much. I will try to use my loud.
Put it up a little bit closer to
You know what, I think is nice for the, the, what's, well, she really, So anyway, if you guys were getting all that together, I don't know how many of you have tried pastels. It's really a beautiful medium, and I think a lot of people don't realize they still think that that's chalk. And professional pastels of today have no chalk. They are pure pigment with a little bit of binder and no fill, no wax, no oils, no fillers. Of course, these technique white, to make the pieces lighter. But overall, the reason the pastels, professional pastels today are so expensive typically, is because they're pure pigment. They're pure pigment. Low price pastels will be so. But anyway, so each one of these,
And to see it's here and he needed to be here.
yeah, you will have
there are few pigments, no chalk. So what would they be called when you're looking at it in school or catalog?
Soft, they call them soft pastel or dry pigment pastel.
Okay, it's not oil pastels or
The oil pastels have oil and wax in them. And the reason that there is such vibrancy with the soft pastels or dry pigment pastels that I use is because the light refraction qualities are not interfered with the use of oil or wax. Okay, so you've got pure crystals of pigment sitting on the surface of the paper. And, I do have to say that I didn't bring a framed piece today, but framing them up, I typically frame them as an oil painting, like an oil painting. And I use museum glass on my pieces. And it definitely helps sell the work because it's reflection control as well as UV. So, you all sell your work and have a resale worker and you can buy it for wholesale. Save yourself a lot of money. But pastels are really, should I just tell them a little bit about myself? Okay, all right. So I've been, in this part, I was born in Seattle, raised in San Francisco Bay Area, and then came back up and landed on Seattle in 82. So I've been kind of a part of Whitby since 82, but my husband and I live by Cooper Mountain, and I had a studio downtown Seattle for 20 years, and I really loved my studio. That was the hardest thing about moving back full-time to Whitby, the fact that I did my studio downtown. But, I have a lovely studio in my home. It's a downstairs floor, but it has a beautiful water view and very nice. But anyway, I started out mainly as actually started out with calligraphy. Then went into watercolors, and I did watercolor for probably 15 years professionally. I started out at the Bellevue Art Show, the Bellevue Art Fair. I think the first time I was there was 92. And then as I was getting more into it around 2000, I was introduced to pastels. And I had already started doing oil painting. So, and I would say that 3/4 of my work, or like 70% of my work is pastel, and the rest is mainly oils. I love doing plein air whenever I can, and I do have to say, the majority of the time I go out plein air paint, I'm painting in oils, not in pastel. It's just easier, easier. You can destroy a lot of pastels doing plein air. So really love that transition. One of my big influences as far as the transitioning over was Bill McEnroe. Bill McEnroe's passed away, but he was a lovely man that did all kinds of fabulous work. And some of you my age might remember him. And there were other people. I went and studied because I had already pretty much gotten the composition and the values and what I kind of wanted to say down to my watercolors. I was known even then for strong use of color and strong use of values within watercolor. And I think switching to pastels was really fun because you didn't have to. Watercolor so technique driven. You really have to have all your ducks in a row when you start painting. And with pastel, I could be a little bit more playful. I also like the element of mark making, of putting down, making a statement, quickly value statements with the pastel. So that was really exciting for me. And it really most people, put it under glass. And, you know, so it was the same thing I was dealing with there, and also the same sort of thing when you're going out to galleries or whatever, that, you know, they don't really like working that much with things under glass. But the main thing you always need to remember about galleries is all they care about is whether the work sells. So that's really what it gets down to. But I use a variety of pastels. I use a variety of pastels. Some of my favorites, Sennelier, Blue Earth, Terry Ludwig. Terry Ludwig and Blue Earth are handmade pastels, and Sennelier is a French-made pastel. It's not handmade, but it's a wonderful quality. So anyway, I use a variety. So, you know, I like softer pastels, so I tend to do that. I typically start with a hard pastel though, for my sketching in, and that's always I keep on everything because I glue with it, right? Take your gloves on, it's difficult. But, so in pastel, you work a lot like you do in oils, where you work dark to light. And that when I teach intensive workshops, I really try to get people to focus on that, because your paintings will come out with much richer colors and a stronger value statement. So, thank you. These are our harder pastels. They're Faber Castile. They're a far less expensive pastel, but they come in very handy, especially, you know, in the initial laying in of the work, and then building up the soft on top of that. So today I'm working. This is a scene from the Skagit Valley, and I have a couple of different photos here. I don't know if you can see these here. This is one that is kind of at the same scene, and this is more of later afternoon light, so you can see the catching of the light, and that's more what I want to play with here. But I love the simplicity of this piece. So kind of working. Typically, when I'm working in the studio, I do start with photos as reference materials, and then soon after that, once I get my composition laid in, and I do believe in value studies. I really believe in value studies, but once I get the composition laid in and really start working, then I can really go away from using the photos so much, other than maybe reference to where the light is hitting certain objects. I really love to do low light situations. So typically, like this one here, I'll turn it more into an evening scene with an evening sky, but that doesn't alter the shapes of the elements in the landscape. Okay? So this is just a black pastel, and what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have a low horizon line. I don't want it in the middle. So I'm making this line, horizon line. And then it goes back into the distance there. And then this one comes down. So I'll pull this one down. And I want to make sure that this, the central focus is not quite in the middle here. I can play with that stuff, but using just basic elements of laying in the composition.
So how did you prepare the paper that you're working on?
So, very interesting question. So, the paper I typically use, I don't know if we asked that question, the paper I typically use ampersand is great because you can order them in any size. So some of, my artist friends, order the ampersand boards like this in big size. I tend to get a roll of the UArt and just keep it at my framers or at Dakota Art and just call him and tell him what size I need mounted. And so they'll make, because sometimes I'm making commission pieces that are really big. So, 4x5s and all of that. So it really depends on what you need to make. So what I did today for this, I do not like working on white paper. Because what ends up happening with white paper, number one, I think it's easier working on a tone paper because you can, then if it's this is a light mid-tone, but you can work your darks down from that and your lights up from that. So I think it's helpful. The other thing that drives me crazy, not oil painting is really easy to cover up, but with pastels, a lot of times you'll see have all these little bits of white left everywhere. And then you're making marks to cover up those little bit of white. With marks you really don't want to make, but need to make because all the little white speckles are disrupting the view or the viewer's concept of your painting. It's just, I think it's disruptive. Anyway,
So how did you picture background with, I noticed that you were running.
oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. I was acrylic. So today I used just acrylic, the red oxide and some wash that was of Iridium. Now, most of the time I use just wash because being an old watercolors, the wash moves, right? It creates all kinds. You see how, this is from the red transparent oxide. It doesn't move like the wash moves. So one of the beautiful things about doing underwashes like this is that you're getting beautiful grays from the colors blending. So, and grays are very important. I love color, and you see me using a lot of most saturated colors, but we need some of those grays and make them colorful to really offset all the color. So,
You ever use watercolors for a
oh
base?
yes, I mean, wash to me is a lot like watercolor. I mean, watercolors are just, wash is cheaper. Wash is cheaper than watercolors. Yeah. And so it's one of those things, for the most part, it's getting covered up. So it isn't important to me to use a really high-end watercolors when I can just use a wash. It just seems like everything has gotten so much more expensive. Yeah.
When you're using wash and you understand the pores, does it fill in?
Oh yeah, I mean, you really, if you want to come up and take a look at this, it's really very amazing. Now, there are boards that are a lot more pebbly, which I don't use. But this is like embedded with a sanded finish, so a textured finish, but it's very fine. So if I'm filling in here like this, you can see that there's tooth on it, right? You can see there's a tooth, but this is a hard pastel. As I put more on, and I like the fact that this is a hard pastel because it's leaving a lot of the tooth. Does that make sense? Yes. So, the harder I push, the more I can fill it in. But just to fill in this shape here, it gives you an idea.
Can you tell us what color you were using?
Oh, this is just black. So the one great thing about pastel is that unlike watercolors, when I talk watercolors, people would ask me, what are you mixing there? And you have to go, okay, well, this is ultramarine with a little bit of alizarin with it, Anyway, it's just I can tell you what basic color it is. whether it's a blue-green, a darker blue-green, a yellow-green, you know, a basic green, that sort of is what I can say, but I can't, they don't have, names as far as, I mean, some of them do. I take the wrappers off my pastels as soon as I get them, because I use the side of my pastels. So let me just go ahead and get the rest of this, composition in here.
You ever put pastel on top of a watercolor painting?
You know, it isn't something, I remember trying it a couple times, and I remember I didn't really like that. I mean, it was, I either wanted it to be just the beauty of watercolor, or, you know, the pastel, but I didn't really enjoy, mixing the two of them. Okay, this is kind of a grassy grassland down here. Well, it is, it's a wetland area here. This is just outside of the Connor. It's one of my favorite places that I found when we go out playing or painting up there. A couple of areas that are really,
So Teresa,
yeah.
when you chose the transparent red oxide, did you do that deliberately for the sky?
You know what? I tend to paint warm. I tend to like my overall wash warm. And so it was just something that I actually grabbed it when I picked up this panel this morning. And didn't even remember that all my wash was in my suitcase. So I'm like, okay, I get it together. So I'm going to bring down a little bit of the reflection down below this too, these larger shapes, and then this one here.
And I'm sorry if I didn't catch it, but why you're using black, is that so your stuff?
You know what? I'm almost doing a value study on the paper. And, you know, for whatever reason, I started doing this right when I started doing this stuff. I started with the black, and I just kind of stuck with it. When I first worked in pastel, I used Sennelier Lacarte and the sienna color. And Sennelier, they now come out with a water media for it, so that it can also take water media, but it has a beautiful feel. And I highly recommend, you know, trying some of that paper. You know, you can buy it toned, already toned. And again, I really like that warm mid-tone sienna color. So just gonna bring these on down at a looser fashion. And this all the way down. But yeah, it really is just getting in more of a value study, where back here, if I could but the other thing that works out nicely with this is there's a lot of room for sky back there and some water reflections down here. So at this point in time, I can go to more color. I'm going to try to keep my values similar, but I can use all kinds of colors in doing that. And this is a more of a So it might be a little backlit, up and around, the back side of it, but, everything would be a lot darker. I mean, everything would stay in a really dark value and just have, the illumination would be the light of the sky and say the moon or the stars. I really enjoy, I live on New Horizon Lane. So, you can imagine I do a lot of moon scenes because we really do, get to see beautiful, moonrise, which is wonderful. Okay, and I also want to move some of this over to this area. But I'm still working in mainly, darker values. You said the dry pastel? Harder dry pastel. Harder pastel. That, no, that isn't really a harder pastel. It's pretty soft. So I'm gonna go in and let's see about different, maybe more of a blue green here. And I really do enjoy changing up the colors within a piece as I'm moving around. And it takes me a while. I really enjoy making an interesting palette decisions. And sometimes that takes me a while to really get a feel. But this is, as you can see, this value is almost exactly the same as the green that's down there. But it's, relatively speaking, a warmer note than
Are you putting the color on top of another color, out in
Yes.
black?
yeah.
So how many layers of color can you do before you find out the color mud?
Well, you know, one of the things that I can put about 5 different values, but part of it is using a light touch when you're first starting painting, so that you have you allow yourself options. How's that? Darker down here. That's not darker. But it does mix up here. And when you're doing pastels, if you get to a point where you feel as though you put on too much, you can take like microfiber cloths, or you can. This is called a this is the Mr. Clean little things, yeah. Anyway, if you want the word, some people use them in watercolor. This you want to use dry, but going back in there, you can definitely take off pastel and then be able to restate your the color statement or the value statement if you want it in a better way. So I'm going to go, I'm going to add a little bit of oil to this here, and that's going to be too. It's really a lovely medium, really. And there's quite a few very good pastel artists in the area.
Are you in the Pastel Society?
Yes, in the pastel. Oh, am I in the Northwest Pastel Society? Yes. And I'm also, I'm a signature member of the Pastel Society of America, and I'm a Master Circle Pastels with IAPS, which is International Association of Pastel Societies. And I'm also a signature member of the American Impressionist Society. But I'm not one to enter a lot of things, but I keep on occasion.
Well, I tried, I was working on watercolor paint,
Uh-huh,
and I've done it and some, pastels or,
uh-huh.
and I was disappointed because they gave me kind of a rough edge, kind of, the paper was more, it was a rough paper, so I didn't want to finish on that.
Yeah, it's really hard on that rough of a typical, say like, whether it's, how do I go on? Not a rough, but even a
Texture press?
texture, cold press. Thank you. Even a cold press, it's a lot of texture. So when you're going on there trying to make refined marks on it, it makes it, it's difficult to do that.
Now, have you ever used, kind of, liquids, in water to make your watercolor or texture,
My pastel, you mean?
your pastels are?
I haven't. I really find that, in working with a pastel, there's a lot of texture that I can create just with a pastel. So I'm not feeling like I need it, but there's a lot of people that do a lot of experimental work. But I do believe that, handling of the pastel really creates some wonderful, textures on it. So here I'm adding a much lighter pastel. This is the color of the pastel we're doing. But, trying to build up more form, within this value shape. And one of the things that I find is that's so wonderful with the pastel, or using the pastel, is the use of being able to use the sky holes and opening up the landscape that way. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go right into the sky, so we have some time for that. And I did pull out the sky. So when I'm thinking about the sky, I want movement in my sky. I want the sky, to be able to have some movement in it. And when you can see this here, lots of just go through. So I'm loving this movement coming here, but I'm going to want some clouds this is really, you know, where the landscape, when you take a photo, if you're measuring for the sky with your camera or your phone, the sky is going to be, you know, illuminated, and you're going to get the lighting right on it. But, and then if I take my camera and I would touch down here, then it would bring a lot more color and light into these darker areas down here. So when you're out there taking photos for references, make sure that you're doing that. And there was an app at one time that, you know, HDR does that, where they blend, they take the lightest and the darkest and then melt it into one good, or better photograph. So,
Teresa, you could take it to the bottom if you like. Or would that be-
sure, no, that's fine, that's good. I can stand back and look at it.
Oh,
I think that'll work great, and that way they can take a look at that. So I've got a lot of, you know, the darker maps in the clouds is not going to, you don't want it to be as dark as the value shapes in your landscape. So I'm going to try to pick out some, oh, the sun is out? Is that actually the sun? Oh my God. That's just scary, isn't it? There's sun. What a marvelous thing. I'll take it. And I'm like, how did my pastels get illuminated all of a sudden? So here's a blue gray. And you can see, look at the bit of the, I don't know if you can see it, but the oranges from the underwash that peek through there. And it's really a nice complement to each other. So what I do is I get my basic shapes in my landscape, and then I start in my sky, and then I typically go back and complete the sky. So you kind of have to work one, then work the other, and then you'll want to work some of these color notes into your landscape. So I want to have this posing over here. And the great thing is, you know, edge quality, right? You're wanting to make those outside shapes of your trees, bushes, or whatever, and keep them interesting for the viewer. So, this looks like a big blob here, and I want to shape it into a much more interesting tree. I love doing skies, really love doing skies. And I can even start with some of the down here. And with the water, I can blend this right back into reflection shapes here. And if I need to reshape some of those, then that's what I'll do. Okay, so that was a good color. Really like that color. goes down into the. That one's a little bit on the dark side, so I'm going to use a little bit of it up here. We want it to be warmer than that. I mean, or lighter than that, lighter value than that. Triple this, dangerous. And this is a stronger. See how warm people are going. I'm going to go into more of a red orange now. Actually, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to do the color of the sky first in that background. You can see. And I see the sky having a lot of yellow down here in it, and more of a yellow green up here. So. This is a thing that's maddening about this easel. I mean, I really like how secure it is for a traveling easel, but the points get like that.
Are you working with the size or some chops?
Yes, I would say that for the way I work with pastel, that I am using almost entirely the side of the, we don't call it pastel. Pastel. It's like,
So by side, do you mean the flat side or where two sides meet?
no, the flat side. So the nice thing about the square pastels, I do have to say, is that with the square pastels, if you need to go in and have a very fine, thin line, you can get it, right? Easier than with a round one. But just the way I work, I tend to use the side of my pastel. And I'm not a blender. I don't blend a lot with the pastels. I mean, I blend them by layering them rather than with your finger. studio, I would have a couple of different goes at that, you know, taking my time building it up to that height of a sky.
Is that white light?
No, it's actually green, yellow, yeah, it's very different than white, yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if I have white, I don't even use white per se, but, this is a white. Can you see any difference in that? Yeah. And this is the intensity of the hue over this pastel is still quite, you know, light. But
If you put some dark, or you really want to put some light, by mistake, would you try to take some of it off with Mr. Muscle, or would you?
You know,
Or can you put light on the dark?
I think it would depend on what, how large a space was it. But I mean, sometimes I'll just take a little, if it's a little area, I'll just take a little bristle brush and brush it off. And, you know, and, I mean, I have, you know, doing painting, I remember I was doing this big Italian landscape this time, one of these times, and, I just don't know, you know, sometimes, you know, you should stop painting, you know, in 2 hour people, right? And I remember coming back in the next day and looking, I loved the landscape, but the sky was just bad. I mean, I was just like, what was I thinking? Anyway, I turned it to the wall and left it there for like 2 minutes. And then I finally went, today, this thing is gonna live or it's gonna die. And I turned it back around and I got out my double depot filter vacuum cleaner with the brush end and I vacuumed off the sky. I actually vacuumed off the sky and repainted it and I was very happy. So, you know, it's interesting how, it's, you know, it's much more, it's very, pastel is very forgiving that way. So this is a much warmer, this is a much warmer note in here. And when I'm doing the skies, whether it's the sky part or, you know, the clouds or whatever, I try to use several different colors that are close together in value, and it kind of helps it create a little shimmer that you wouldn't otherwise have. So I'm going to add this back down here.
Can you go over again how you would frame it? You still framing it under glass?
I still framing it under glass, yes, have to frame it under glass, no matter what. It's
You don't
pastel.
put a sealer or?
No, I do spray it with Lasco. Lasco is a spray fixative for pastel. But, you know, it's more expensive than the other ones, but it doesn't alter the light or the color or the value. So there's all kinds of different pastel fixatives out there, but it's the only one I would use. And it's spelled like the case in France, Lascaux. And it's made in Switzerland, but it's very fine. I mean, even after spraying it, I'll put like 2 sprays on here before I send it off to my framer, but you can still mess with the pastel. I mean, the pastel isn't set there, that hard. So I'm wanting to cut down into these clouds and make them more interesting back here. So I'm gonna cut this right back into here. it develops more into a more complete picture. So I was thinking I might get a little bit of this orange here. Sky here. And a little bit of it further up here. Last light is catching it. There. And try to carve down into these shrubs here. A little bit more interesting. And then down here, I think I wanted a little bit more pink. So, can't get my poplar trees to be straight. They're just all. Here. And go into so just kind of the spectrum of colors going in and having more of a yellow orange in there, hopefully. A little bit lighter. And you want a couple little bits of branches in there, so. Carving that tree back in there, and then putting, pinky color. There's that sun in. Wow, it's like, ooh, I can feel my thing. We'll see. So this is a really warm, but it's more towards a pink, but coral. Corally colors there. Yeah. Into the shrub here. More of it goes here.
It's amazing that you added all those colors this time. And before the trees looked so dark, and now you can see the green.
Oh, that's good.
More.
Yeah, oh, good. Yeah, I mean, it just goes through stages, right? But I can add some of this.
It's like you opened up our eyes.
So pretty.
It's so much fun. I mean, I love watching other people paint. And it's one of those things that is, just teaching, in Texas and last week. It was really fun to watch. All different paint. So I'm softening off the edges of these clouds somewhat. Here. And then the new pair of gloves that he's painting? Oh, yeah. Maybe many. It depends. You know, I try to, I've even tried to reuse them, actually, you know, and, because, you know, it's just more stuff we throw in the garbage, or the garbage can. Look at how the underwash down here, the Meridian, that was so faded, right? But it's almost exactly the color of the sky there. So I'm gonna put in some of this, and then I'm gonna add some other colors. The water reflection you can really have fun with and play with. It doesn't have to be over again. Because with the reflection and the water's moving and all, or there's some wind on the water, we get all kinds of wonderful effects.
Teresa.
Yes, it's almost time.
Huh?
Are you saying it's almost time?
It is 2 o'clock, and I think we'll take a break at
Okay.
2:10,
Yeah.
and then have critiques at 2:15.
Okay.
Everybody goes.
I hear a lot of people brought in work today. And I think that's so much fun that you guys have an opportunity to bring your work in and have it, you know, looked at by other people, get ideas. It's always good. I mean, I have to say, before a major show, it's so wonderful to have a couple of my close art friends come by my studio, because you start getting a little weird, right? I mean, because your thought process is like, oh, you know, yeah, I get lie in bed in the middle of the night and go, oh, it's so terrible. And then I go back down my seat and I go, no, it's okay, it's okay. But to have friends come in and say, well, you know, you might want to look at this, or, you know, you might want to look at that. It's just really nice, you know, to have people that are, you know, aren't going to say terrible things, but that glue you in
nice.
to things, and or, you know, asking them specifically, okay, what do you think about this piece here? What do you feel that I can do to enhance it?
Or should I stop here?
Or should I stop here, right? You know, I'm thinking of going back into this and do this and this, and they're like, no, don't do that. That is something you need to do. But those are all, you know, things that.
Teresa, I think one part Ellen didn't mention just now is a critique of the work in the back that we bring in. And normally the speaker does that for us. And so the last, say 20 minutes would be you with the microphone going painting by painting and saying, you know, what you think could be improved.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah, no, I think that's, okay, yeah, I'll stop.
No, wait, we have to have, yeah.
Find the best market for your work. Is it in this area? Is it in
You know,
hubs? Is it
okay,
in
yeah, you know,
galleries?
I showed many years at Howard Mandel when they were down for Knott's Great Gallery. They now have a much smaller gallery in their winery in Woodstock, so I still show there. And then Rob Schouten Gallery in Langley on Whidbey Island is a very fine gallery, and they give me a solo show every year, so I'll be having a solo show in July. And then Scott Milo is another in Annapolis, so I show there. But I also do I used to do 3 outdoor shows a year. So, you know, and you build that up over a period of time, and I have to say, at this age, you know, it's very physical work, right? What even we hire people to set the booth and everything for it's still a very physical. But I do a show in La Quinta, California, and it's a very well, I call it La La Land. It's a very, very well-off community of people from all over the United States. It used to be Canada too, but their dollar is so bad. But all of it is so in March, and all people from all over the United States have their second homes, and that's when they come and sit. So anyway, you go where there's right, and then I also do, sometimes I do the Denver show, which is Cherry Creek, which is another high-end area and a very well-attended, I did the Bellevue show for many years. And then the other one is Park City, Utah. So again, another really high-end, or per capita business. But, it just takes a while. I remember back, when I first really started doing Bellevue Art Fair. Though I have to say, Bellevue Art Fair, I have clients to this day that call me and say, oh, we need another painting, or we'd like to have this done, whatever. But my clientele grew so large doing that show. Yeah. So, because it's a numbers game. Doing outdoor shows, you have thousands of people during the weekend that are coming and just walking through to see your work, right? It's so different than even galleries where only a certain amount of people are going to see there. You put it out to your people that are be showing there, but still there's only a certain amount of people that go through there.
Do you like doing or prefer doing commission work?
I don't prefer doing commission work. I will do commission work as long as it's within the realm of what I do. I'm not, and I've just gotten really good. If it's not something I do, giving them information for an artist that does do that type of work. So usually it's clients that have already purchased from me before, and then they're wanting something specific that I would do. I did one this last winter for a couple in Bellevue, and they were old clients from Bellevue.
The landscape?
Yeah, it was a landscape. But he is from Constantine. Anyway, so they have this really famous bridge there. Okay? So, it was a big painting with a lot of architecture. So, it was a little bit, but the people were willing to let me do my thing within that. So, that was good.
Why did you stop doing the reality show?
You know what? I almost felt like going back to it this year. It was because the Denver show and the Park City show are right after that, and I'm also sandwiched in between my solo show. So it just comes at a bad time, for me. But I have to say that I was really thinking I would come back and do the show again. Any show has its ups and downs, right? And I haven't physically been to see the show for a couple of years, so I'm not really sure, how it is. How was it last year?
I didn't hear advertised last couple of years ago. I don't know.
Really? Well, they might have really been cutting down on the advertising dollars that they were putting out. And that it is, having it flash on the TV screen or in different things, whether it's glass or sculpture, or musical instruments, or wood furniture, or fiber, or whatever. But, again, it's getting our, name, getting that advertisement out there, and it takes a lot of effort, to get people, because you're competing with all the other things that are going on during the summer months in the Northwest.
Thank you, Teresa. We have time for Virginia's now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So many tell how these plants shows out there right now. I'm good, thank you. Because I look, is it publicized?
This is so fun to see these lovely pieces here. And, let me just start over here. So this is okay, wonderful. And they all have their nice points to them. This one really leads you into the painting. I always tell people, so when you lead the person into give them something when they get back there. So it might be that just a brighter stretch and greenery back there, a little bit more light back in that area. Or you could have a distant row of flowers or something. Have a distant, bright distant row in the back there. And do that. But the textural aspects of it, good value statements, so that you see your tops of the rows and the tops. And this one here, I really love how expressive it is for mark making and for mixing and not over mixing color. So she's putting it on there again with the powder lines and letting it be. I think your color and your skills wonderful experience. It really is that sense of depth back there and nice to be and then these are these oils here? Okay, yeah, just a big love. This is, really captured, it's a gesture, wonderful. So it's a solid color, there's some clear and there's some white racial This is the one piece, this is watercolor, obviously, and I take it that I was off the road. And his composition is very, yeah, it's very light, just like the feel, it's being out there in that snow, and having that white richness and having all that space. I think it was very nicely done. Are you shape was different. Three veils. Which makes us put it. I'll put it on. Sue is your, yeah. Where's your lip? Right in it. My sister's mom.
You want the horses too?
No. She wasn't really good. And we saw the rhino down here. This is a big rhino. Look at that. Yeah, that is really neat. So there's some talking and then turning around. Oh, this is the one. I didn't know it was still hours. Inside out.
So it's the beginning.
Well, really, once you were that.
Right. Okay, yeah. I know, where do you send it?
Anybody else? Was that fun?
Oh, so these are the left of them.
You would have really nice day. This year. Yes, very nice. Thanks, next time I'll bring 2 sushis.
Oh, really? No, I was told not to. Oh, really? You could do it on your own. Oh, yeah, I raised that every It just makes it familiar, don't you think? At least have a I'm from the old days. We had twice a year. Christmas can make it that was the first Presbyterian. And one thing about artists, they're all good cooks. And so, you know, that's something we probably should have that. You know, but anyway, but this sushi
is from QFC, and it's not anything, it's kind of standard, you know, so a lot of people like it. It's not something that is, oh, yeah. It can certainly vary. No, mine has model power, yeah, and then it's actually competition. But it's good. It takes no, it's imitation craft is actually a flavored fish, yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. I don't like it straight, but I like it as fishy. So fine.
Very well. So I just stayed around and did his work, and then I headed home to find out that her husband over to visit Grandma's 90th birthday week, and I never got to lay down. Next thing I knew, it was an hour till I had to be at church, and I had to mix the sounds for you.
Hard over you.
That day, I was beat by the time I felt sleepy 3 times during the service. So I'm sitting here holding my music, and suddenly I jerked out, dropping my folder.
Oh, I've done that.
Middle of the homily.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I'll see that.
St. Margaret's. No, the one I for about 20 years ago. St. Margaret's. I mean, it's where I call it the place with Catholic church. But then, since I went back to school, St. Louis and St. Madeline's. Yeah. I up there for Monday is like the only day of the week now where I don't know to never
more contrast, but also the fact that we want as our parents, this is very hard. This is exactly the whole house. Here, middle, and the waterfall lights up. So, yeah, but I mean, this is,
Where do you usually do it? You usually change like that. Well, you have those big houses where you want that booth. You stole the coat because it looked nice. Your hair looks really nice. Teeth, not so.
Metal down in there. And that, my next project is to add the parts, fake. I made. Of course, the next day,